Hi, I'm Alicia Welcher, host of our PFAFF 160th Anniversary Sew-Along, brought to you by PFAFF and Classic Sewing Magazine. In this video, I am going to share my new favorite accessory foot for my PFAFF Creative Icon 2. It is the 9mm Pintuck foot with a decorative stitch guide, this foot right here. Now, the purpose of any Pintuck foot is to create beautiful Pintucks that are perfectly parallel to one another. This particular foot allows for 6mm and 11mm spacing between Pintucks. So let's look at what we can do with that. This right here is part of the Pintuck panel that I used on my gown. And so what we have here is we have 3 Pintucks that are each spaced 6mm apart. And then over on the other side, we have 3 Pintucks that are each spaced 6mm apart. The 2 center Pintucks are spaced 11mm apart, and what that allows for is for us to be able to stitch a 9mm wide decorative stitch perfectly centered down the middle of those Pintucks. It is a fabulous thing. Now, you can stitch as many Pintucks in as many patterns as you want to. This is just the pattern that I chose to use to do this gown, and it's the one I'm going to show you how to do. Okay? Now, first, before we get started, we're going to look at the foot. And this right here is what we're going to accomplish before we do our decorative stitching. That's our Pintuck portion. Now, on this foot, we have a groove in the center where the Pintuck stitches. Then, to either side of that groove, there is another groove that is 6mm away. Then there is yet another groove out on this extension that is 11mm away from that center groove. Okay, so that's what allows for our 6mm spacing and our 11mm spacing. Now, sometimes you're going to want to have this extension here on the right of the foot. Other times you're going to want to have that extension on the left, just based on how you need to align your previous Pintuck. The cool thing about this foot is that it is turnable. So I can put it on the machine like this with the flange on the left, or I can put it like this with this little extension on the right. Okay, right now I'm going to put it to the left because that is how I started my Pintucks. Okay, all right, so now what we would do here, where we start, is we do a Pintuck right down the center of our fabric. So this Pintuck right here, all I did is I drew a line down the center of the fabric. Then I placed that line in the center of the foot, and I stitched my first Pintuck. Then I moved that Pintuck over to the next groove, and I stitched another. Then I put that Pintuck over in the groove, and I stitched a third. Now what I want you to see here, I'm going to put the foot down, and what I want you to see here is when I do the third, and if you do a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, this is going to apply as well. When I do my third Pintuck, I actually have 2 Pintucks riding in this extension. I've got one riding in the extension and one riding in the foot. Whenever possible, you want to have that happen. That makes this very stable and it makes everything very even. You'll just get a better result if you have this extension on the side that you're moving your Pintucks toward. Okay? Now, when I go to do my next step, which is to do these 3 over on this side, I'm going to move over and I'm going to want to have this Pintuck be in the extension, but my extension's over here. This is the beauty of that turnable foot. So I'm going to do is remove the foot, flip it around, and put it back on. Just like this. Now, when I go to do that next one, I can get this Pintuck right here into that extension, and that will stitch this first Pintuck. Then I move over so that my first Pintuck is in the foot, the groove in the foot, do my second one, and then when I move over again, remember, I'm going to have a Pintuck in the groove in the foot and in the groove in the extension to do my next one. And that'll give you all 6 of these Pintucks. So it is a fabulous foot. It's beautiful for doing this, but we're not done yet. When you go to do your decorative stitch down the center of this, when we use this foot to do the decorative stitch as well, because when we place the center of the foot into the center of the space, the Pintucks on either side are going to ride in the foot. And that is what keeps us perfectly straight and parallel down the center of these two Pintucks with our decorative stitch. So it's a fabulous, fabulous thing. Now, one other great feature of my PFAFF Creative Icon 2 is that I have a built-in projector that can project my stitches. So I have the capability of auditioning stitches without ever having to stitch a thing. Now, I do still have my twin needle in here, but I have turned off the activation for the twin needle in my settings. I'm not going to stitch, so I'm just going to leave it in there. We're just going to ignore that it's there and pretend it's a single needle at this point. Okay, and I'm going to turn on my projector. It's just a button that's up here above my needles. My lights are going to dim, and the projector will turn on. And you can see that I have a projection of a stitch on my screen. Or not on my screen, on my fabric, okay? Now, I can change this to anything I want. I can just keep picking stitches until I find some that I like. And then the ones that I like, I can try and stitch out. But I don't have to stitch a thing if I don't want to. And if I find something that really doesn't work, then I don't need to stitch that out. I know it's not going to work because I can see it right here, okay? Now, the stitch I used on my gown was 5/3/26, and it is the one that is on this panel, because remember, this panel was from my gown, okay? So you can see that this projection right here looks a lot like that stitch. So it just gives you an idea. I think it's a wonderful, beautiful thing, because this is actually full size also. So it's giving you a true view of what your stitch is going to look like on your fabric. And it's not just for this, it's for anything where you want to see what your stitches look like. Okay, so hopefully this gives you a good understanding of the purpose of this 9mm Pintuck foot with the decorative stitch guide. Once you try it, I'm sure that you're going to love it just as much as I do.